Now, South Africans can expect lower stages of load shedding as Eskom says 5 of its generating units have returned to service. This will allow the emergency reserves to be adequately replenished. 9 units had broken down at various power stations, resulting in losses in generating capacity, which led to load shedding escalating to stage 6 over the weekend. The electricity minister refuted claims of sabotage, but attributed power cuts to boiler tube leaks. Eskom says its unplanned outages have reduced to 14,000 megawatts of generating capacity and that its team is working tirelessly to ensure that additional generating units are brought back to service.
Eskom has returned to service 5 generating units, which will allow the emergency reserves to be adequately replenished by Tuesday morning. This will enable the reduction of load shedding to stage 3 from 5 a.m. on Tuesday until 1600. Stage 4 load shedding will then be implemented from 1600 on Tuesday until 5 a.m. on Wednesday. This alternating pattern of stage 3 load shedding from 5 a.m. to 1600 and stage 4 load shedding from 1600 to 5 a.m. will be repeated daily until further notice. Eskom will closely monitor the power system and communicate any changes to load shedding should it be required.
Well, it's bringing energy analyst Ruse Moleshe to weigh in on the heightened rolling blackouts since Friday morning. A very good afternoon to you, Ruse, and thank you for your time on the SABC at this hour.
Good afternoon to you, Lizel. Good afternoon to the viewers.
Obviously now just hearing from Eskom that 5 units have returned to service. This is on the back of escalating load shedding, which was addressed by the president in his SONA address last week. We're looking at the reasons also coming forth from the minister, issues of a trust deficit, and really what is happening behind the scenes. Questions about sabotage also coming to the works. What are you observing on the back of what's transpired this weekend?
What is supposed to be happening is that communication regarding what is happening in the power system should really be the competence of Eskom. And it should bear in mind that we have a system that is relatively constrained, that doesn't have much of reserve capacity to be able to come in should anything happen. So politicians should not be promising what is not necessarily they cannot guarantee, because Eskom cannot guarantee 100% all the time reliability of the system. In other countries and elsewhere in the world, you generally have reserve capacity that is on standby, so that if things like this happen, that reserve capacity comes in to mitigate the risk of load shedding. So we don't have sufficient reserve capacity to such an extent that if something goes wrong on the supply side, it then exacerbates the problem. So we have been performing relatively better, but that performance has to be sustained over a long period of time before we can have confidence and say that there will be no load shedding.
Because as you alluded to, the competence of Eskom comes to the fore. Adequate communication as well about the matter coming to the fore. Questions about whether the Minister of Electricity and the President are on the same page and how this is inspiring or taking away from investor confidence. Talk to us about that.
I mean, obviously, if communication is not consistent and not accurate, nobody is going to have confidence in that communication. What we have an understanding from Eskom, especially when the new board came in and their strategy was to stabilize the generation capacity, to increase planned maintenance over time. That very same increasing of planned maintenance, which has been happening for a while, also reduces the potential supply sources. Although it's a good thing, but it does that. So the minister and everybody else involved in government should be helping to ensure that there's standby capacity to support Eskom as they try to make sure that there's some reliability in the system. It will not take a few days as we wish or as the elections are coming through. It will take some time to observe a consistent reliability in the system as they bring back units over time.
Well, speaking of it being an election year, some of the concerns on that front and how it's going to impact dynamics unfolding going forward. I wonder as well, as we look at some of the interventions that have been put in place, the hits and misses. We obviously saw the implementation of the electricity minister. We also saw, some of the other interventions regarding renewable energy as well. But really, this has impacted businesses and livelihoods, and it's obviously being felt by the most vulnerable. Well, help us understand from your vantage point how that plays into the selection here.
Let me make a disclaimer. I'm not a political analyst, but from an energy supply point of view, this obviously will have an impact on the economy, and I would presume that viewers will not take kindly to that, and so it is likely to have an impact on that. So the intermittency, yes.
Okay, thank you, Fushe, for that. Let me look at the exploring the options of our green economy, green energy, a just energy transition. Some of the interventions that obviously is also going to be taking time. What are you observing on that front, just as we also obviously adhere to the ESG principles? Is it enough? There were talks about exploring nuclear options as well. Talk us through how that also comes into play, given where we are as a country.
Okay, so from a long-term perspective, South Africa is looking at the horizon that is post-2030, is looking at nuclear generation coming in potentially to support the need for baseload capacity and other technologies, including gas, renewable energy, and still some of the coal plants which will be extended. So that is the energy mix that we will be looking at. The drivers for what energy mix will be considered are obviously security of supply. So therefore, that means that if you are going to have a certain amount of renewable energy in the system, you need to have a flexible capacity to go hand in hand with that, so that when there's intermittency, then you are able to come in. So those are the considerations that are on the table. In terms of the green economy, or in terms of the investment plan that South Africa has, in my view, it should be measured and considered. Rather than us looking at longer term projects like hydrogen and all of that, we should be focusing on making sure that we first have reliability of supply that is consistent, that supports our economy, before we go into electric vehicles and all these other fancy things.
All right, Ruse, thank you very much for joining us on the SABC at the Sound for weighing in. We're going to leave the conversation there. Ruse Moleshe is an energy expert. We're looking at the increased rolling blackouts experienced over the weekend. Just now, Eskom announcing that 5 units have returned to service, guaranteeing a lower load shedding schedule. We're obviously looking at the hits and misses post-Sona, the implications it's had on the livelihoods of businesses and people, and really waiting from here, all this impacting dynamics during an election year.